So, I need to know, what is it like to be an alicorn? I asked as the four of us had made our way past down the mountains and into the town square. Along the way, we saw several ponies looking at us in an odd sort of way. Some just looked at us, some bowed, and some whispered to each other. Me and Silver were used to making these gestures at blank lengths, but I have to admit, it feels so nice to have ponies admiring me like they should be doing. Well, it's not that different from being a regular pony. You just have both magic and flight, I guess. The alicorn said as she responded, as if she was reading off a script or something. I didn't really care because it's not every day you meet an alicorn in this town. Oh, I don't think we got your names yet, Silver said suddenly, as I realized she was right. Oh, where are our manners? Name's the yellow pony said as he stopped mid-speech to look at his cutie mark, I think. Summit Hill, Summit said as he then whispered something to the alicorn's ear. You can call me, Melanie Base, Melanie said. Wouldn't that be Princess Melanie Base? I asked. Uh, I prefer to be called that at meetings and such, Melanie said in a fast-paced voice. Makes sense, Silver said. Oh, that's right. My name's Diamond Tiara, and this is my best friend, Silver Spoon, I said. Very nice to meet you two, someone said. After what felt like 100 moons of walking, we finally reached the doors to my glorious mansion. It was just outside of Ponyville, as it overlooked almost the entire town. I proceeded to knock on the door with my right hoof, and after a few moments, my butler entered the door. Good evening, Miss Tiara. I see you brought some guests over, my butler, who I never cared to remember his name, said in a formal voice. Yes, they needed a place to stay, and I figured we have several free rooms here, if that's okay, I said. Of course, Miss Tiara. I just wasn't expecting you to be this friendly, my butler said. Don't get used to it. I want you to paint a portrait of me. Stat, I demanded. My butler sighed as he started to walk away towards the art room, aka the paintings of me, because that's what my father pays him to draw. You know, we're not very far into the story, and wait, I know I'm being underutilized here. So I'm going to interrupt here to talk about me instead. So in case you didn't know, my family is very rich. We can afford almost anything I want, like a hot tub in my room, the biggest stuffed animals you'd ever see in your life, and all the newest makeup and jewelry in Equestria. Every single day, I put tons of effort into my mane and tail, and you see ponies walking around with very ugly styles compared to mine. I just can't see how any pony can live without these essential belongings. We learned in history that ponies had to live off farms to make a living, like with the apples, and they just looked so dreadful. They needed the makeover, like, so badly, but they just couldn't get one. I'm very thankful to not be born in that world, but even if I was, I would still look this good. Even if there was another world, you can't change a beauty like me. Speaking of, before I have to change this back, I wanted to mention that my father and mother are working on a sculpture of me to be placed in front of my school. Like maybe one on top of our fountain. That would be like so cool, since I'm the front and center of it all. We now return to the story that needs more meat in it. As the four of us walked further into the entrance room, where there were two sets of staircases that led to the second floor, I could hear my mother coming down the stairs to greet me and ask how my day was in school. "Oh, hello, Diamond. I presume you had a good day all about you in school today?" My mother, spoiled rich, asked me in her very strict and demanding voice, just like any other day. "Oh, today was nothing special. Also, I'm having guests over," I said in my usual voice. "Sydney?" My mother said as she looked right at Melanie, as if she had seen a ghost or anything related to a nightmare night or something. "Who's this, Sydney?" My name is Melanie," Melanie said as I was able to see the backyard and noticed the sun was still out. "Now, if you'll excuse us, I think we need to work on our tans," I said as the four of us headed outside to the pool, ready to get a good tan in for the weekend, and before my quinceañera. Though I didn't see her directly, I saw my mother looking at Melanie as if she had seen her before. I tried to get it out of my mind, but it just stuck to me like a tiara to my head. A few minutes later, the four of us were lounging in my lounge chairs, getting a good tan in. That's when I could finally receive the answer I was wondering about. "Did my mommy recognize you back there?" I asked Melanie after a few minutes. "She seems kind of familiar. Maybe she recognized me from a public event or something," Melanie said. "I guess that makes sense," I responded. The four of us spent the rest of the afternoon in the sun as we tanned until the sun went down. Afterwards, my butler made us some dinner, which just so happened to be his famous steak. As we spent the early evening trying on new jewelry and makeup, except for Summit, who stayed back until we called it a night. Melanie, Summit, and Silver went into the guest bedrooms next to my room, while I stayed in my room as I dozed off to sleep. Meanwhile, I was sure it was her. She looked just like she did when she was a filly. "I know for a fact," I said as I told my husband what I saw. If it was her, then my experiments back there worked. Though I didn't plan for her and her friend to come in as well. Filthy Rich said. Why did you even want her to come back here at all, though? We both know what will happen if she does, or she did something to, you know." I said. She's our flesh and blood, after all. Plus, I think having her here could help Diamond become a better pony. If that can happen with, without the other thing, Filthy said. Should we just keep an eye on them to make sure the worlds don't fuse? I asked. If my research back there in the other world is true, then once they start to show signs of amnesia or anything else to the other world, then that's when we need to act. You know what, Filthy said. Okay. I just want her to know, I said. It's going to be alright, I hope. You don't have to worry, my love, Filthy said, as we then dozed off to sleep.